Scenario 1. What steps would you take to optimize the performance of an Angular application? The answer is: to optimize the performance of an Angular application, you can take the following steps. First, use trackby to optimize ng for loops. Second, use on-push change detection strategy to optimize change detection. Third, use AOT, ahead of time, compilation instead of JIT, just-in-time, compilation. Fourth, use lazy loading to load modules only when they are required. Fifth, use the Angular CLI to create production builds that are optimized for production environments. Scenario 2. How would you handle cross-site scripting, XSS, attacks in an Angular application? The answer is: to handle cross-site scripting, XSS, attacks in an Angular application, you can take the following steps. Step 1. Use Angular's built-in sanitization functions to sanitize user input. Step 2. Use Content Security Policy, CSP, to prevent inline scripts and external resources from being loaded in the application. Step 3. Use Angular's HTTP client to make HTTP requests and ensure that user input is properly encoded. Step 4. Use Angular's built-in DOM sanitizer to sanitize HTML fragments before they are added to the DOM. Step 5. Avoid using inner HTML to add user-generated content to the DOM. Scenario 3. How would you handle authentication and authorization in an Angular application? The answer is: to handle authentication and authorization in an Angular application, you can take the following steps. Step 1. Use a token-based authentication system to authenticate users and maintain user sessions. Step 2. Use Angular's HTTP interceptors to automatically attach authentication headers to requests. Step 3. Use Angular's route guards to control access to specific routes and features based on user roles and permissions. Step 4. Store user authentication and authorization data in a secure cookie or local storage. Step 5. Use server-side authorization checks to ensure that users have the necessary permissions to perform specific actions. Scenario 4. How would you implement data binding in an Angular application? The answer is: to implement data binding in an Angular application, you can use the following types of data binding. First, interpolation. Use the syntax to bind a component property to a template element. Second, property binding. Use the syntax to bind a component property to a template element property. Third, event binding. Use the syntax to bind a template element event to a component method. Fourth, two-way binding. Use the ng model syntax to bind a component property to a template element property and handle changes to both. Scenario 5 is: how would you use Angular animations to create a smooth user experience? The answer is: to use Angular animations to create a smooth user experience, you can take the following steps. Step 1. Use the Angular Animations API to define animations for specific components or elements. Step 2. Use CSS transitions and keyframe animations to create simple animations. Step 3. Use Angular's state-based animations to create more complex animations that change based on application state. Step 4. Use the Angular Animations API to create reusable animations that can be used across the application. Step 5. Use the Angular Animations API to create animations that respond to user interactions.